Without any further ado, we're going to start recording, and it looks like we are recording now. So, Sammy, please introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. Hi, my name is Sammy Wise. I'm transgender. I have lived here in St. Joseph my entire life, born and raised, for better for worse. I I'm 34 now. I started my transition when I was 25. And then I've been on hormones since 2015. I am non-binary. I consider myself to be non-binary. I consider myself to be pansexual, and a number of other labels if we want to get into that. So yeah, I'm not sure what else to say here other than I've lived here for a while. Tried to do my best to connect with other trans people and to connect with these kinds of things so that we can try and get some accurate information out about what it is we are and what it is we actually need to do. So I'm not sure what else I need to say.
That sounds great. And we can
my
also...
pronouns are she, her, or they, them, either way, whichever you find easiest to use. That's fine by me. So
okay, all right, thank you. Sam?
I'm Samuel Cherry. I'm a trans person that lives here in St. Joe. I was born and raised in a small town close to Blue Springs, and it's called Grain Valley. Yeah, a lot of people don't know where that's at, so that's the closest I can give you. But I run the Griffin Trans Alliance on campus here at Missouri Western. Other than that, I try to be active with the community. I'm doing some work with other things that aren't related to trans stuff. But I've been out since I was, I think, 16. Started hormones around the age of 18. Kind of went off them for a while because just some other stuff came up. So, yeah, my pronouns are he or they, whichever one's easier for you to use. And that's about it on me.
All right, thank you very much. And Mist?
Hey, I'm Mist. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as genderqueer. That's under the trans umbrella for, it's a way of saying you don't identify as a man or a woman. So I used to go to college in St. Joe, and so I lived there for, I think, like 5.5 years or something like that. I live now in Eastside, KC. I'm 30, and I didn't fully understand who I was until I was 24. So out 6 years now.
Okay, all right, thank you all so much for sharing. So the first thing that we're going to go through is some terminology definitions and a trigger warning up top. Some of the phrases that we're going to go through I've included so that we can talk about why not to use them. I'm kind of viewing this as a transgender 101, and I think a lot of people use terms not understanding their impact, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping this can be, is a safe space for education. So the three of you can each kind of pick whatever you want to pick or respond as you want to, but how would you define transgender?
I define transgender as any person who identifies as a gender other than what they were assigned at birth. And that's basically the long and short of it for me. I know that's still complicated because we have to talk about assigned gender and gender identifying with, but yeah, that's
agreed.
The long and short.
And for us, yeah, for us as transgender people, we're already privileged in knowing what transgender means. And for us, it's individual experience. But for some outsiders, it's black and white. It means male to female or female to male, and that's not what it. I mean, it is part of what it is, but people don't understand that it's an umbrella, and there are many people that fall under that umbrella. So being transgender is exactly what Sammy said. Anybody identifying not with the gender they were assigned to at birth.
Okay. All right. Non-binary, how would you define that?
Somebody else go.
A non-binary person is someone who it identifies as a gender other than strictly man or woman. Like I consider myself to be a non-binary trans woman, so like I'm both a woman and non-binary. It's also an umbrella term for like other. There's non-binary people who consider themselves to be like a mix of genders. There's non-binary people who consider themselves to be lacking gender, and there's people who consider themselves to have a gender that changes throughout their life or throughout their day sometimes. So yeah, if I guess that's a nutshell there, I suppose.
Pretty much non-binary is the spectrum between what would be considered a man and a woman.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I wouldn't necessarily say between.
Yeah, I would push that even further and say that some non-binary people don't even identify being on the binary. They're off the binary.
Yeah.
Yes.
It just means it's not strictly man or woman.
So non-binary. So if we're gonna talk about being binary, that's man and woman. So the binary is man and woman. Just like visually, man on the left, woman on the right. But if you're non-binary, you can't be on that spectrum. So it's non-binary.
Okay. All right. And Mist, maybe you would be a good one for this one because you said you identify this way, but genderqueer.
Genderqueer, I think it's just a nicer way to, it's still kind of like a broader term of non-binary. It can be a lot, the meaning can have a lot of meanings. It's a big umbrella term. So I identify as genderqueer because like I'm non-binary, but I don't know on the spectrum where I fit, if I'm even on the spectrum. I don't know, because the way I feel, and I don't know if I clarified this at the beginning, every trans experience is individual, and so what we say is just our experience, and your experience is going to be absolutely different. But so saying that, my experience as a gender queer person, I feel like both man and a woman, and nothing at the same time. Instead of like people feeling like a man and a woman, I feel like both and nothing.
Okay, great. How would you define gender fluid?
I'm pretty stagnant. I'm very, I identify as this one person, as this androgynous genderqueer person. There's no fluidity in it. If I were, I would probably, like I said, I would be fluid between that feeling like both and feeling like nothing. Can somebody else help me out on this one?
Gender fluid, it means that you experience a gender that changes.
Exactly.
Like, my understanding is there are some people who like have a gender that changes like contextually, or have a gender that changes like with some regularity, or just sometimes people use it as the overarching term for non-binaries, and I generally consider that to be like not the correct way. Like a lot of authors will use that, like they'll say gender fluid instead of non-binary, but I'm not fluid so much myself, so
yeah,
it's pretty much exactly as it sounds. Like it's a fluidity between any gender. It could be any number of genders, it could be any of them, just that it's not stagnant in one.
Yeah.
Okay, great. A couple of you have used the terms female to male and male to female. These are often abbreviated FTM and MTF. Could you go into a little bit of detail about what that means?
Like, my understanding is that we are trying to move away from using that sort of terminology in terms, just because of, like, it emphasizes the transition rather than the person. But yeah, so like I'd rather than say that I am a male to female trans person, I would say that I am a trans woman, because that is a lot more accurate, to rather than emphasizing, like I said, the act of transitioning. It's more about affirming who you are. So.
And it's not like those aren't terms that a lot of people like to use anymore, just because like it goes into the like, well, what were you before? Which is not where we need to be. Like, you shouldn't be focusing
Also,
before.
yes, I feel like it also kind of like what Sammy said before. It kind of kneecaps us as a person in general, but it also kind of puts a fetish on it too. It's kind of weird.
Yeah,
that's all I wanted to say about that.
a lot of things too, honestly, but yeah.
Okay. All right, great. There's some confusion around the pronouns they, them as singular pronouns. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about that?
That's so exhausting. I feel like that's just a cheap shot, like a below the belt comment to invalidate somebody. I don't really feel like it's about the grammar, and if it is, like, you really need to have a hard look at yourself, because you should, I feel like it's kind of classist to keep like correcting people's grammar and how they talk. And they, them is totally singular. I just feel like it's such a total excuse to be transphobic and invalidating. And it's exhausting because it's such like, oh, I haven't heard that one before. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's perfectly valid to use singular they pronouns. Like, it's a thing that everybody does in their speech, all the time. If people push back against it, yeah, like they said, it's just out of transphobia. But yeah, it's using those pronouns is affirming to someone who doesn't necessarily identify as the binary role. So there's no reason for anyone not to affirm that. So.
Okay.
Right.
How would you define cisgender?
Someone who identifies with the gender that they were given at birth.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. They're Latin prefixes, right? Cis and trans meaning across from, and cis meaning the same side as, and that's all it means. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so now we're gonna get into some more. So this is where the trigger warning comes in. So these words
I'm getting nervous.
So what I would prefer here is more of a discussion of why these don't apply, rather than a discussion of how you would define the term. And this is just so that allies who may be watching this would know how to be the best allies that they can. So transsexual.
So the reason we try to emphasize transgender over transsexual is just like I was saying before with MTF and FDM. It's about emphasizing your gender, not your changing of the gender. A lot of people like make a distinction between transgender and transsexual to mean someone who has undergone medical transition, and that is not the important part about being trans. I mean, it is very important, for the people who do and need that, but it's not the thing with which identifies our community.
And it goes back to centering, fetishizing it again, like it's transsexual. It's bringing it. It's centering sex for some reason, and I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
And another good thing to note with some of these terms is that older trans people will still use them, like people who
yeah, they do. Yeah.
These were the only terms that they've had before, so just because you hear somebody saying it doesn't mean that's something that you should be saying. It just means that that's what they were identifying with before we had the terms that we have now.
Here.
There's also sort of a movement for people to try and bring it back, just for to make the academic distinction between. Okay. I don't agree with that at all. But
okay. So crossdresser.
That's just kind of another way of saying a man dressing up as a woman, and that's pretty offensive.
Yeah, I mean, that's specifically, it means someone who wears the clothes that is generally considered to be for a different gender, while still identifying with their assigned gender. And there are people out there who are cross-dressers, and they're perfectly valid, and that's cool. Do your thing, but that is not the same as being transgender. There is obviously broad overlap from one community to the other, but it's, as trans people, we are not cross-dressers. Although sometimes we can cross-dress, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, it's often used against against transgender people as a slang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, it's people can dress in clothes that aren't matching their what people would expect of their gender without having to be put into a separate box.
Mm-hmm.
Expression.
Yeah.
I get you.
And this one's not necessarily derogatory, but I would just like a little bit of distinction. How would you distinguish drag queen from transgender?
Drag queen is somebody who dresses up you as a show type thing. I don't know why I answered this one. I'm not 100%.
And it's for entertainment purposes. It's also a form of expression and art. Anybody can be a drag queen. There's a lot of gatekeeping in that community. It's traditionally known as gay men dressing up as women for performances, the classic Tina Turner and Cher performances and so on and so forth. But I think it goes way beyond that. But
yeah, it's a performance. It's cross-dressing with a performative element, a performance. So. And
there are people who are drag queens who are trans as well. So that's
and then there are cisgender women who are drag queens too. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Dysphoria. How would you define that?
Someone who is uncomfortable in the body they were born in, or certain aspects about the body that they have. So traditionally, you would think of somebody who has dysphoria as somebody who has breasts and doesn't want breasts, or certain genitalia that they don't want, and that makes them uncomfortable in their own skin.
And it's not really a requirement for being trans. So that's another thing that people get confused a lot, is that they're like, well, have to have dysphoria to be trans, and that's not the case. It's just some people have that aspect. And even, I think, even cis people can have some issues with that as well.
For sure.
Yeah. Sometimes we make a distinction between dysphoria with your social role and then dysphoria with your body, make a distinction between social dysphoria and body dysphoria when that's relevant to the conversation. But yeah, it's not a requirement for someone to consider themselves to be transgender. And it's also a lot of times for a lot of people kind of masked underneath a bunch of other psychological issues until you transition too. So, but yeah, it's yeah, dysphoria is like a source of pain for a lot of trans people, and it is what a lot of us seek to alleviate through transitioning. But again, there is other, the community doesn't only include people who have dysphoria.
Correct. I don't experience tons of it. I do here and there, but I am overall comfortable in my body, and that can in my own community that can to mean to some people that I'm not transgender enough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fighting within the community itself about that, so you'll hear a lot of opinions on it. But
Yeah.
generally people are on the side of like it's not required.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Dead name.
Your dead name is the name that used to be known by before you picked a new one to match your gender more accurately. It comes from either some people will say that it's the name that they will read at your funeral because they don't care about your transition after you're dead, or it's just that name is dead and buried to you because you're choosing a new one.
Okay. Misgendering, how would you define that?
Gendering?
Misgendering?
Oh, misgendering. I thought you said mist.
No.
I'll go ahead since I'm already talking. Misgendering. So my pronouns are they and them. If I go out in the community, I get misgendered a lot as a woman because I look like a woman. And so that's an example as misgendering. And you should never do it because it invalidates that person's existence. If you know, I mean, if you don't know, then there's not much you can do about it. But if you know, do something about it.
On that topic, if you don't know somebody, even if you, that's a whole discussion. But I mean, it's safe to use they, them pronouns, but don't only use it for people that you think are trans.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sammy.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, it's just the act of recognizing someone as the wrong gender, and sometimes it just means using the wrong pronouns. A lot of times that's how I use it, just to mean that someone used the wrong pronouns for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I do have a question about misgendering because allies can sometimes accidentally do that. What is the best way for an ally who has accidentally misgendered somebody? What's the best way for them to handle that situation that makes you feel safe and validated?
Can I talk about this for a second?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, okay, hold on just one second. Can you repeat the question? I just totally blanked again.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I do that all the time. Can you repeat it?
Yes, definitely. So misgendering sometimes happens accidentally by allies. What is the best way for an ally to apologize for that in a way that affirms the identity of the transgender person?
Okay, I know what I was gonna say. I'm sorry. So the you know how people always are like sorry. All right. The sorries only mean so much unless you actually correct the way that you're speaking later on. So if you keep misgendering and then saying sorry, we don't like we will I like even though you say sorry, we know that you're not a safe person anymore. So as an ally, your job is to actively think about how you talk to people, especially if they tell you a certain way they want to be referred to. And if you're having conversations about that person that's not in front of them, you still use the right pronouns because you will misgender them later by not doing that. And that's what I wanted to say.
Another important thing to know is like a lot of people don't like it whenever you're just like, I'm sorry. Just like apologize and move on because you make a big deal out of it. It just kind of like,
yeah,
it's not a fun time.
Yeah, it's not.
No, all I want to hear is I want to say oh, I'm sorry, and then use the right pronoun, and then just continue on with the conversation. But like Miss was saying, it is important for you to take on make an active effort to try and internalize someone else's new gender. That is important for you to do. And
Don't make us come out to you 100 times.
Yeah,
Don't make us do that.
Yeah, if you continue to misgender someone, that really means that it feels like they haven't made an active effort in internalizing what your changed gender is.
Because we will stop trying, and we will stop trying to be close to you.
Yeah. Because there's just nothing to work with there at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The last part of this section is chosen family.
Chosen family?
Mm-hmm.
Like choosing your own family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let somebody answer that. I'll let somebody else answer.
It's like the people that you kind of like choose to like have in your inner circle, and a lot of people don't have really accepting families, so they'll consider them their family.
It's a lot of trans people do not have access to their families, and it is very necessary for a lot of people to like just create family amongst ourselves, just for the act of trying to defend ourselves.
If we get kicked out of our own families, we have to turn to our own communities to create new ones.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay. All right. So now we're into the question and answer section, and I just kind of assembled some community questions this last week, and I've sent those to you guys beforehand, or I'm sorry, to you friends beforehand. So,
right by me.
What sorts of, especially in light of birth certificates, gender markers, dorm rooms, etc.
Okay, so Missouri Western, I'm going to go based off what I learned at Missouri Western, but a lot of schools are different. You have to contact every school individually, see what their policies are. At least speaking on Missouri Western's half, we have a pretty okay program, not the best out there. They have some flaws, but I do remember that in that original question that Josh had sent, they had asked specifically, like, how do you apply for schools with your gender? When applying, you have to use the gender that's on your birth certificate or on your driver's license, because it's technically supposed to be a legal thing. But at least at Missouri Western, they have a form that you can fill out, and it actually changes everything on Canvas and everything that doesn't need to legally say your dead name, and changes that to whatever you would like to be called. And actually in Canvas, it'll change the pronouns that you use. In terms of dorm rooms, our school does have single rooms that you can do like what you need to put on there, just like because they like the gender that you need to put on there whenever applying for a dorm. While it says that it needs to be legal, I've been told by people who run it that they don't actually check that, which is very misleading because a lot of people don't know that. But it honestly, it just depends on which school you go to. You need to just contact that school specifically, whichever one you're interested in, and just ask the questions that you need. You can always ask them anonymously if you're worried about like backlash or something, or have somebody ask for you.
Okay.
Other than that.
Okay. Sammy, you had said that you wanted to field this question, but we hear the phrase identify as a woman, a man, or non-binary. What does that mean, especially in light of our culture's move away from classically defined gender roles?
Yeah, that's like a really good and very well-informed question. Like, I like that a lot. My comrades might disagree with this a little bit, but I tend to consider like identifying as to also be a construct. Like, in terms of like having like identifying as, aside from I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time putting this into words. There is a big debate about what gender is, in terms of nature versus nurture, and I tend to fall on the I tend to feel that it's somewhere in between nature and nurture, probably mostly nurture, and that's what the gender roles are. Those are nurture, but as far as identifying as, I'm not sure if that is a thing that can be conveyed, like what that sensation is. It's like understanding where you fit within the field of gender that you are exposed to in your life. Like I identify as a woman, in terms of I most identify with the people in my life who are women, and then I identify with the role that they live with in the world. So a lot of people will use this, like that very issue of a lot of, like, for instance, trans women will say sometimes that, or at least this is the perception, that trans women will say this, that I identify as a woman because I like to put on makeup and play with dolls. But that is like the construct of being,
Yeah.
that is the construct of being a woman, and then you can identify in those roles just without like enforcing them, without reinforcing them. I don't know if that was rambling or made any sense at all, but
No, I think what you're trying to say is that, oh my gosh, I just blinked again.
yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say, like, the social constructs of what it means to be a man and a woman are just that, just a social construct. It's what people tell us to be.
Yeah. And we identify like within about it, and the gender that you've experienced in your life does affect, like your neurochemistry, and in terms of what feels affirming to your gender, just through neuroplasticity and that kind of thing. The act of identifying with a gender, I'm not sure, like that is itself a construct that we use to talk about being transgender.
You are your gender. Like, your gender,
Yeah.
to clarify, the gender is what you believe, how you feel in your brain. So gender up here, sex is in between your legs.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna,
oh yeah, we
if we're gonna talk about terminology here.
Yeah, we're gonna simplify that.
And people get those confused all the time. It's not the same. Sex and gender are not the same.
Yeah, sex is your the physical
organs
manifestation, yes, of your sexually dimorphic body, and gender yeah, and gender is how you navigate the world within the field of, like, it's hard to come up with a definition for gender that isn't circular, but it's your gender is how you identify within the world, within the field of the gender that you know. I don't know. Some people rely on the idea that, and there is some evidence for this, the idea that you can have like a differently gendered brain from your body, like, but I don't know if that is a strictly good way to define it. Like, it's not just in your head, it is influenced by the world you live in too. And that's what
it's been around for hundreds and hundreds
Yeah.
and hundreds of years. It's not a new thing. It's not a trend made up by the millennials, just saying.
Yeah, no. The distinction between sex and gender is pretty understood to sociology, as I understand it myself. So okay. I don't know if that made any sense.
No, I think it does. Sam, you had said that you wanted to field this one. Do you have any advice for parents whose children, or sorry, nope, back it up. how should someone who is affirming handle the mourning experience that can come with finding out that a loved one is transgender?
So that one's kind of hard because to me, there shouldn't really be much of a mourning experience because that person is still the same person. The only thing that's changed is their gender. Like when I came out, my mom told me that she was mourning like who I used to be before, even though none of that changed. My personality didn't change. I didn't change as a person. My gender just changed. So it's a really hard one for me to be like super sympathetic to because it's not, that person's still there. I know it's
sorry. I think
Go
it's
ahead.
just the person mourning the idea of who they want you to be or who they thought you were.
And that's another thing, is putting this idea onto it. Like, I thought you were going to be this. That's, I don't know.
It's a pretty unfair thing to do to your kid.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this. It's kind of unfair to put these expectations on your child, but it also is probably a better question to ask somebody who's affirming of their child how they dealt with it as well. But it's still that expectation that you're putting upon them that's not super fair, no matter how affirming or like positive you are about it. It's still like, well, I thought you were going to be this, and now you're not going to be, and you're completely changed. That's not true. People are still who they are.
Yeah.
They've probably been that way for a while.
Yeah, it should be more about being happy that they are able to be happy in their life, having come out, and there shouldn't be much to mourn about it. I'm not unsympathetic to that, but again, it's not really about you. Like, your child, it's not about you.
I think
So.
parents think a lot of parents think of their children as extensions of themselves, and it's really hard to respect their children as individuals that are completely different from their parents. Like, I had a lot of identity problems because I always thought of myself as an extension of my mother, and I tried to live up to the ideal of what it was to be a good woman to her, and I was sheltered because she wanted to control a lot of that. She wanted me to keep being her extension. I think it's important for parents to realize that these are not your children are not extensions. They are individuals, and they have the right to be authentic and true to themselves. Otherwise, you're just kind of oppressing growth. Like as soon as you let them grow, the better. Because it's gonna happen. It just might be later in life if you don't do it sooner.
Okay. All good thoughts. And Miss, you had said that you wanted to handle this one. Do you have any advice for someone who is not out or may be living in an unaffirming home?
The first thing I would say is do what's safest for you. You don't have any obligation to anyone to come out to. You don't have to come out to anybody. If you feel unsafe to do that, you have no obligation to do that. You can live inside the closet if it's safer for you. As far as coping goes, it's kind of hard. Fandom, animals. So you just have to kind of like a river, you just have to cut your own path. And it's gonna be slow. It's gonna be painful. That part, I mean, I'm gonna get teary-eyed talking about it because it's so emotional for me. But living in an unaffirming home is living with your family knowing they don't respect you for who you authentically are, and that makes you insecure for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to add anything?
I mean, do your best to connect with people online if that's a possibility. That's about all the advice I can offer to that.
Oh, and you can move out. I mean, like, you will turn 18 at some point.
Yeah, of course.
There will be an end to this. Yes.
I mean, definitely hanging in there. Like, it's not, your parents being shitty to you is not the end of the world. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't.
Yeah. It's not. Also, like, if you're in an invalidating home, sometimes you don't have the tools or resources to actually discover who you are, so you grow up emotionally immature. So if you just feel like an outsider, or if you just feel geeky or out of place, just know that there isn't anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean you are queer. It just means, like, you just don't fit in the boxes that people tell you to, and sometimes the boxes, your family try to fit you into those boxes, and just know that it's gonna hurt, but you can do other, you'll have support outside this, outside your family one day. I hate to say it, but keep your head down.
Friends can be a big thing. I before I was able to come out to my family, I had a group of friends that I was able to come out to, and just having that, like, if you have a good group of friends that aren't going to tell a family member, that can be a lot.
I would like to add one more thing once Samuel's done talking.
Oh, I'm done.
You're done? Okay. I was going to say, if you know that you're queer, and you're living in an unaffirming home, just know that you don't have anything to prove. Like, the process of being queer is a lot friendlier on your heart if you just work on accepting yourself and let go of the expectation of getting other people's validation. Because I pushed so hard to get my family to validate my identity as a queer person, or at my place in society as a queer person, and eventually I just stopped and I just started being, and that was liberating, and they started to see me more, I feel like, as a queer person, once I stopped pushing for them to tell me that, hey, I need you to validate me. Once I started being like, I don't need you guys to validate me anymore. I'm really happy about who I am, and I love myself. I don't like, if you guys love me, that's great, but if you don't, I'll be okay. I kind of really worked on that. All of my mid to late 20s up until now. That has been a long journey. Love yourself. Don't rely on anybody else's validation.
Okay, great advice. On a different tact, do you have any advice for parents whose children are indicating that they don't identify with the gender they were assigned at birth, especially when these indications are persistent, insistent, and consistent?
Support them. Listen.
Yeah, as always, the important thing is to listen. Yeah, listen to your kid. Listen to where they want to take this, and support them every step of the way.
Even if they change their mind later.
Yeah, even if they change their mind in 10 days, it's fine. 10 days or 10 months or 10 years, it's okay. But the most important thing is to listen to them and to support them in what they need. There's just no other option really for what you should do for your trans kids.
And if you can't, when parents don't know to listen, they usually take their trans kid to like a therapist. When in actuality, they don't really need to take their kid to the therapist. They need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say that if you feel like you can't listen to your child about their journey as a queer person, the problem isn't them, it's you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let me get to my question. What is the one thing you wish you had known when you started your journey?
that there was a term called non-binary. I was so confused I knew I was queer, but heck, I had no idea that non-binary was a thing. So I'm walking around being like, I don't know, I'm not a man, but I'm not. I don't know. I was so confused for the longest time. I'm like, something ain't right, but none of these titles fit me. So I'm glad that the culture came back and I could like actually find a title to go with how I felt.
I wish I had known that not everybody was going to have the same reaction or views as my family, because it would have been a lot less stressful knowing that people weren't going to always be like that.
My one thing that I wish that I had known was that there's no use fighting it. that I wish I'd have given into that like a lot sooner than I did.
Yeah.
Like I wish I'd have been able to tell myself, like, okay, you resisting this is getting you nowhere. You need to just embrace it. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Do you have any movies, books, podcasts, or other resources that people can go to see more of the transgender experience?
Well, not anymore. Harry Potter used to be my trans patronus, and I'm kind of yeah. I don't know what to say about that. Yeah.
Whatever you do read, make sure it's something by a trans author, because a lot of stuff written by cis people just isn't accurate. It's fetishy. It's not good.
That's true.
There's plenty of books out there. I don't read a lot, so I don't know what books there would be. I'm on a library panel. I don't read a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly read a whole lot either, but the books that have helped me a lot, the few that I've read, oh gosh, I used to have a copy of it right here. Yeah, definitely trans authors. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it. I like really appreciated the works of like Julia Cerno, in terms of like understanding the relationship between being a trans woman and feminism. Understanding that was very important to my journey. Also, like I don't know, it depends. There's lots of trans YouTubers out there. It kind of depends on what audience you're looking for. If you're looking for like an academic approach, or if you're looking like a children education approach, I can definitely give you a few examples of who not to watch. But yeah, I don't know. I like Steven Universe a lot. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a good little cartoon if that's what we're looking for. It's pretty queer.
That sounds great. So wrapping up, we're running out of time. We didn't get to everything that I wanted to get to, but I had expected that. So the second to last question I have for each of you is, what is the best thing about being transgender?
I'm allowed to do whatever I want.
Can't you maybe confusing people?
I mean,
that's a lot of fun. I get called like from behind, people like, "Excuse me, sir," and I turn around and they like totally like I'm so sorry. I'm like, that's the highlight of my day.
that's a good time, I tell you what.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I'm just going to take the stereotypical route and saying the best thing about it is being able to express myself, rather than repress myself. That is definitely the best thing for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, would you like to shout out a queero? And this is a person, place, or thing that made you feel comfortable being you.
You guys go first.
You were all told ahead of time.
Yeah, but I couldn't think of one then.
Every single one of my
No, I have one.
Sam, you were saying?
Oh, sorry.
every single one of my friends, honestly, because I make sure my circle is good.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
for sure. Person, place, or thing. There's lots of things that I probably can't talk about on this stream. But yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, I have a lot of supportive friends and like too many to name. So they've been very helpful.
I'd like to shout out to my friend Melly. She is a queer person of color that's been doing a lot of awesome stuff around the arts community in Kansas City and has been provided me with a safe space when I needed to come to her and talk to somebody. So shout out. Love you, Melly.
Oh, and another specific shout out for me is Dr. Oakley, the one who helped me start the Griffin Trans Alliance on campus. Best cis person I know.
Aw.
Unfortunately, she does not work there anymore, but she is in Kansas City still. Important.
Okay, I want to thank each of you so very much for doing this emotional labor for the community. I understand that this is hard work, and I want to just say again, thank you. I do believe it's important. As we're wrapping up, I had somebody from PFLAG reach out to us and ask that we mention that this Sunday at 1 p.m. at the corner of Frederick and Belt, there's going to be a Pride Supports the Black Lives Matter protest. And I would encourage you to attend if you are able. On that note, thank you all so very much for attending and having an open mind to listen and learn. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, Rosie.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it a lot. It's good to have these conversations.
And Josh,
Yeah.
did you see the messages in the chat, by the way? I think there was a question early on.
Okay. We do have a little bit more time if you guys don't mind, if you friends don't mind sticking around. One of the questions that we had was, what types of privilege do you feel cisgendered people have that they aren't aware they benefit from?
Being able to just walk around without being scared. Like, I don't have that much anymore now that I'm like, quote unquote, casting, but like before, like you can just walk around and be like, yeah, I can be whoever I want to be and not have an issue with it.
Yeah, that's definitely a privilege that people don't understand. Just the idea that you can exist in the world and then be seen for who you are is a privilege, and man, is that a big one.
Yeah.
Your identity is not constantly up for debate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody asked if we have a transparent group in the area. We do not, but we do have a very active PFLAG group, which is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and it is very affirming to every member of the community. They meet every week or every other week, and they are currently on Zoom. They have, if you just search PFLAG St. Joseph on Facebook, you'll find their page.
And you could
Okay.
always start one.
I'm sorry, Sam?
You could always start one if you wanted to.
That's true. We did not have a PFLAG group for quite a while, and a few active members of the community decided we needed that, and we were all very thankful for that. So, all right. On that note, we managed to keep it under an hour. I'm very proud of us for that too. Again, thank each of you so much, and have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.